I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Mr. Hammer, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Angels. As you know, we are internationally syndicated via Late Night in the Midlands in the U.S. and deprogrammed radio in the United Kingdom. Today, we have a very special show for you today because you're going to get three, not one, not two, but three different guests. Besides us bringing you all sorts of topics, including politics, celebrities, paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, and everything like that. Today, you're going to get a little bit of both with the very first guest. I don't want to waste too much time since we do have a limited time with him. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Kane Hodder onto the show. Kane, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Now, let's talk about, before we go into paranormal, what you did on the big screen. Who were you?
Okay,
who did you portray?
Yes, I played the character Jason in 4 of the Friday the 13th films. I always add that I'm the only person to play the character more than one time. I did parts 7, 8, 9, and Jason X. And I also stunt coordinated most of those films as well. Then I did 4 movies as a character called Victor Crowley from the Hatchet films. All 4 of those movies that exist were me playing the character. So another guy in a heavy makeup killing everyone. So then those were more recent than the Friday the 13th that I did. Also played several other monsters and killers, a couple of which were real serial killers. Played Dennis Rader in a movie called BTK, played Ed Gein in a movie called That. So the fact that I've played so many killers kind of just seems to be a natural thing for me. I don't know. I've been a stuntman for 41 years. Worked in a lot of big action films along the years, like Demolition Man, Gone in 60 Seconds, Enemy of the State, Lethal Weapon 3. Did a few movies with Steven Seagal, Daredevil, Monster, 7. All kinds of fun movies, and I always loved doing the stunts. So I still coordinate films that I work in, typically, but that's basically in a nutshell.
One of the, I'm a skydiver. This is a very biased question. One of the skydivers I jump with is a stuntman. By any chance, have you ever jumped?
No, I have not. I always was intrigued by the idea, but I never did it because there's not a lot of call for it in film. And, the guys that do jump typically are the guys with the cameras and, stuff like that. So it's not a big demand. So it never was something I really chased after, but it always was interesting to me. Who is the stunt guy? Would I know him?
His first name is Scott. I don't recall his last name off the top of my head. He recently got elected into the USPA, which is the United States Parachute Association, as one of the directors for the Southwest region, also known as the Pacific. Yeah. He does a lot of the films. And when you mention the demand for skydivers in films, it's a select few that are always being the same people. I know that for a fact because one of the drop zones I go to has pictures of every single celebrity or look-alike of every time they film something. Now, going back to your long history of being involved in films, this is going to be sort of hard to, to decide the answer on. But of all the roles you portrayed, which one of the films did you feel in your own heart came out the way you wanted it to be the most? Because they were all great to me.
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough question because I've done, I think, 160 films.
Wow.
Over my career. So it's a little bit tough to try and pinpoint any. I mean, one of the ones I was most proud of was Monster, because I was the stunt coordinator and Charlize Theron won an Oscar for it. And I played the cop that arrested her at the end of the movie. So that was pretty exciting. And obviously playing Jason is something that's right at the top of the list, because as a stunt person, you're used to being in the background, excuse me. And, so you don't get a lot of notoriety, but then all of a sudden you play a character like Jason and everything changes. So that would have to be at the top, but there's so many films that I was really proud to be a part of. I mean, I worked with, so many different people that I used to admire, and all of a sudden now I'm working hand in hand with them. So it's a pretty amazing feeling.
Let me give you a little admission. When I was young, the very first poster I had was of Freddy Krueger, and the very second poster I had was Jason Voorhies, the one where he had his mask lifted up and you could see his little gory face. I am sure that shocked the heck out of my family and parents, wondering what the heck is a 5-6-year-old doing with this, because this goes back to the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, these were the kinds of movies I liked then, and of course was never scared of. And obviously this carries all the way through into my adulthood. Now, throughout your film history, let me ask you a question. You also you're involved in a paranormal group, and I'm going to ask you about the name of it in a second. But did you start to get involved because of what you were doing, or is it something that you already had a passion or were thinking about long before you got involved into your professional career?
Well, it was something that always interested me, but it wasn't until I was on the set with Rick, and I'd like Rick to tell the story because he tells it so well about how we decided to form a group. We were doing a movie at a prison, Mansfield Prison, which is pretty well known for paranormal stuff. And I'd like you to ask him about that moment where we decided, okay, we both have this interest, we're going to form a group. And I just think it's interesting the way he tells the story.
Oh, I absolutely will. Now, let's talk about the group and how many members and what the functions of it are.
Yeah, I mean, it's, what's interesting about the group is that everyone that's in the group has something to do with making horror films. So it's either actors or directors or makeup effects people or, and any number of different positions, but it's always somebody that does horror films. So we thought that would be an interesting group of people to go ghost hunting, because we typically make a living doing things that scare other people. So now we thought we would go out and see if something can scare us. And, it's a fascinating world, the paranormal world. And I'm always very, very careful to not let my imagination go crazy if something small happens. I don't want to make it into something more than it really was, because I think there is that factor exists in the paranormal community where people have something small happen and almost subconsciously let it be built into something more than it really was. And I don't even think they know they're doing it sometimes. So I'm very, very, very careful about not letting that happen, because I want to, if I have a story to tell, I want to be convinced that it couldn't have been something natural.
You want it to be accurate.
And so,
yes.
Right. And not exaggerated. Because if there's anything that happens that could have been created by something else, something natural, then it's hard for me to get excited about it.
How do the rest of your colleagues in the movie industry and I guess within celebrities feel about paranormal activity? I mean, do they, most of them, do they look down at you or look at you and say, oh, he believes in ghosts, or he, or this person believes that we are being visited by ETs or something like that? Because I do know across the rest of the population, depending on where you are and depending on the year it was, some people really mock other people. But I would hope that now the year we're in, I mean, considering it's almost Halloween of 2018, I would hope that people would have more of an open mind. Do you get sort of an open mind when you talk to other colleagues when you're on set between shoots about maybe some ghost hunting adventures you went through?
Well, I mean, you know, I guess I haven't really encountered much of the skepticism from people around me. You know, maybe once in a while somebody will say, I don't believe in that stuff. But most often people are more intrigued by it, at least that they're willing to consider that that kind of stuff could exist. So, you know, I don't, and maybe they're just afraid to tell me themselves that they don't believe in it because they're, you know, afraid of my reaction. I don't know. But who knows? It's just that I really don't have to deal with it too much.
Well, what I've noticed is there's two types of people, or more than that, but specifically the people that are so close-minded, they say it's impossible. There is nothing but what we see. Once we die, we're just gone. How could there be ghosts? How can we be visited? I mean, we're not seeing these little gray men or green men everybody are talking about on a daily basis. So I have a feeling the inclination is, when you say intrigued, these people possibly could be closeted paranormal lovers, or at least you may be introducing them to that. Or on the other hand, I think it's a very small group of people that truly are afraid of your reaction in that sense, because those staunch people that say, hey, this does not happen, this cannot be real, I wouldn't think that they would hold back in saying that.
Right. But, you know, it strikes me as fairly ignorant to say that, you know, not you, but for someone to say that they know for a fact that nothing exists. I mean, that's asinine to say. You haven't been dead, so how do you profess to know exactly what happens after your death?
That's right.
I mean, it's pretty ignorant to be so pompous about an attitude of disbelief. If anything, say, I don't know if I believe in it, but who knows? You know, nobody knows for sure unless you're there. So I find it pretty frustrating when somebody professes to know all of that when they couldn't possibly really know it. Just say that you don't believe in it, but don't try to tell me that it doesn't exist. You don't know that. You know?
Agreed. I'm going to try to get as much out of you in the next 14 minutes since I know you do have to go, and we'll have to get people enticed enough so we can bring you back and everybody will have a thirst to hear more of you. Let's talk about some of the locations that you've been ghost hunting at. What are the ones that stick out the most in your head?
Well, I mean, these are well-known ones, but the one that happens to be my favorite is Waverly Hills Hospitals, because we've been there several times, and the owners are great, and they keep the property, maintained well and conducive to investigations and stuff. So that's probably my favorite. But then there's so many others that we've been to. Mansfield Prison, Sloss Furnaces. I've been to the Stanley Hotel. Even the ones that are not as well known are really fun to investigate. I was just in Salem, Massachusetts last weekend, and that's got a pretty good history. And I just enjoy going to a place that has any kind of history, whether it's well known or not. And if it has anything interesting or it's a different type of location or something, that's what I end up enjoying the most.
Have you ever seen any aberrations or any ghostly activity?
Like I said, I am very careful to not get too excited. I really can't say I've seen an apparition. I did encounter my best story is from Waverly, and it was certainly noise and footsteps right near me in the pitch black, and no one was there. So that was as close as I can get to saying something was paranormal, because I can't think of any other possible explanation for that particular incident.
Very good answer, and that's the best way to cover all the bases. That way you, like you said, you don't want to say something without having the concrete proof. Now, when you do go ghost hunting, I'm assuming you bring along equipment such as, something to record EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, and other things like that. What sort of equipment do you carry when you go?
Well, this is something that more a good question for Rick, because he brings far more equipment than me. I don't rely on too much equipment myself. I want to experience something personal. So I don't want to get excited about some meter, registering something if I can't see it or feel it. That doesn't do anything for me. I always bring cameras, but as far as the other devices, Rick is more into those things, because I want my experience to be personal, not based on the results of a machine. If that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does. Now, you mentioned camera. I know you told us the story about these footsteps near you in the dark, which amongst that's an anomaly. But with your camera, have you ever caught anything on film?
I have not with my cameras that I've taken with me. Nothing that I would say is good enough to talk about. I'm hoping. I mean, everybody always jokes saying that, the spirits and ghosts are afraid of you, so they don't show up when you're around. And that's just, a joke. But it does, in fact, happen more often than would be by chance, where we'll be somewhere, and in particular, Sloss Furnace. We were in the Death Tunnel or whatever. I think it's called the Death Tunnel, and nothing was going on. And I said, "Watch, I'm going to walk down to the other end of the tunnel by myself, and something will happen when I'm gone." And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I was way down at the end. All of a sudden, where the group was, the meters started going crazy, and somebody felt like they got shoved. So,
Now,
it's joking about saying the ghosts are afraid of me, but they do seem to always avoid doing anything when I'm around for whatever reason.
when it comes to the talk of paranormal, do you believe, or at least have an open mind about other things such as us being visited from ETs? I mean, for instance, the DOD, not even a year ago, about 10 months, maybe 11 months ago, released some footage that they had Navy pilots capturing these objects that were not very aerodynamic. They were violating our known laws of physics, and so on and so forth. What do you think is going on with that? Do you? Some people say, "Hey, that's just us testing our very advanced military new propulsion and new equipment." Other people say, "Well, hey, that's another indicator that we are never alone, because this is such a vast universe, or multiverse, as
Right.
many people say it."
Well, for sure. And once again, it's ridiculous for somebody to say that it does not exist, because there's no way that someone could know that. So I keep an open mind to everything. I sometimes term myself, and I think it's fairly accurate, as an open-minded skeptic. I'm very careful to not exaggerate things, which brings in the skepticism. Sometimes people inadvertently make things more than they are, so I'm very careful about that. So that's why I say skeptic. But I'm open-minded enough to realize that there could be any number of things out there that we don't know about. So, I do feel that any of those things could exist.
Now, a fair amount of skepticism is very healthy, especially when you have an open mind, because unfortunately there are these people that pull off hoaxes and other things like that, or some people may see something that is conventional and all of a sudden believe it's not, and so that's a very good thing. Now let me ask you this, since we are getting near the end of time. Within the film industry, of all the 160 films that you've been involved with, were there any other celebrities or people behind the cameras that have had such an intense interest in the paranormal that may have gone ghost hunting with you?
Nobody that comes to mind, because those people that did express any kind of interest decided to become a part of our group. There's plenty of actors and actresses within our group that expressed interest. So we said, "Hey, why don't you join us? And we'll go, investigate together." So I've run across a lot of pretty well-known actors that believe there is something out there, and not so much that they investigate or anything, but I kind of, when I talk to them about it, they kind of make it a point to say that they don't really want it talked about. So there's been a number of really big actors I've worked with that expressed interest, but I don't feel like it's my place to mention names.
Totally understood. And of course, obviously, because if you did, you'd out them. And I would think that someone who is such a public figure, and some of these, I would think that if they had that attached to them, then they may not get the roles they want because some of the producers may be really staunch skeptics and believe that, hey, this person is not right in the head because there's no possibility we are, that there's anything else going on. So I'm going to use this last 3.5 minutes or so to talk to you about, again, what we started with, the film industry. What's next for you?
Well, I think you probably know, or maybe you don't know, that my documentary about my life was just released and getting really good, tremendous reviews. It's called To Hell and Back, the Kane Hodder story. So I would hope people would take a look at that. I did a movie this summer with the Impractical Jokers because we're all friends, and one of them was in the last Hatchet movie because he's a horror fan. So Brian Quinn was asked me if I would do their movie with them as far as stunt coordinator, and I play a character in it too. So there's that coming up. You probably know I did all the motion capture for Jason in the Friday the 13th video game that is very popular right now. And so every movement in every version of Jason within the game was done by me. It took us almost 2 years to complete all the motion capture. So very, very proud, and I felt honored that they would select me to do the motion capture. And there's lots of other good stuff coming up in the future.
Well, who better to select than the one person who's portrayed Jason Voorhies the most and did the best job, so I couldn't imagine anyone else. And you brought up a very big and good point. The fact that celebrities are now involved in video games a lot more than 20 years ago, because now the technology with video games is so advanced. I mean, I've seen some commercials of, for instance, one of these NBA games, and doing a double take, I was like, is that a real game or is that just a video game? I couldn't tell the difference. So I could only imagine where we're going to go years from now. And I'm pretty sure for a fact they're going to follow up with having you on again. Now, I do know you have to get off for this conference call, so I'm going to give you a quick chance to say any final statement you may have, whether it be about your paranormal group or anything you want to say, Mr. Hodder.
Well, I mean, I was unceremoniously replaced as Jason after doing 4 films in a row. So I talked to a lot of fans, and they tell me they would love to see me come back, and I would absolutely welcome the chance to play Jason one more time. The next movie would be the 13th movie, and what better time to bring me back for a few more acts of violence than on the 13th film. So that's what I would say. Let's do that.
Friday the 13th, number 13. That's very fantastic, and that would be very, very fitting, Kane. I honestly can't wait, and I implore everybody out there listening to do what you can to reach out or to submit requests that when this film is being casted for, ask for the one and only Kane Hodder. Kane, it's been a true pleasure, and next time we'll do this for a lot longer. Thanks again for joining us.
Okay, well, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on, and we'll do it again.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Okay. See ya.
Okay, folks, now we have to bring on the other guest, which he inferred. His name is Rick McCallum. Let's bring him on to the show. That way he can talk a little bit more about the paranormal group and his role in the film industry, as well as I'd like to know the equipment that they bring on, because of course other people who talk about going ghost hunting, there's a lot of things that they bring, and I've honestly never been ghost hunting, so I don't know. Oh, let me say one thing. If you recall, last Wednesday, Joshua P. Warren, or was it last Wednesday, Joshua P. Warren was on the show, and he talked about the wishing machines. Well, today mine arrived. He sent me one. Very, very nice guy, and I'm very excited about that. So if everyone can hang on a quick minute while we bring on Mr. Rick McCallum, and he will be on with us live on air. And then you'll have a surprise second hour from this show. That's why I said this time you get 3, not 2 guests. And it was supposed to be Kane Hodder, but just before the show, he had a teleconference that he was called for. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but it has to do with the fact that he might be cast for something else. So that would be really killer if it happens to be Friday the 13th, number 13, because he did in fact play Jason Voorhies more than any other actor. Let's bring on Rick. Tight, folks. Live radio. Gotta love it. Let's see here if we can connect with him. Okay, I'm not hearing him, but it says it's connected. Aha!
Hello.
Rick, welcome to
Yes.
the show. You are live on the air.
Sweet.
Yes. Everybody, welcome Rick McCallum. Mr. McCallum, we've been talking about you with Kane, obviously just before he had to get off. And one of the questions I asked him was about ghost hunting and what equipment what you guys bring on. And he said, save those questions for Rick. He knows a lot more because he's a technical guy. But before we get into that, you said something else too. That was intriguing, that you too are in the film business. What exactly do you do in the film business?
I act, I stunt coordinate, and I do stunts.
What films would people recognize you as?
Let's see. I got Chainsawed in Half and Hatchet 2. I've done roughly 75 different films. I've been in Naked Gun, 33 and a Third, J. Edgar, all 4 Hatchet films, Fallen Angels. I mean, just a ton of them. So that's places they could see me. And they could see all of us on Ghost Adventures, by the way, because we're the only group that ever ghost hunted with them.
And that's actually something I wanted to talk about too. Is that the name of your paranormal group? Ghost Adventures?
No, that's a TV show. Ours is called the Hollywood Ghost Hunters.
Hollywood Ghost Hunters. Okay, now I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Kane Hodder. When you guys go ghost hunting, and he told me several places that he's been to, including Waverly, Salem, Massachusetts, several places. He said that he is yet to capture anything on his camera, and he's also being careful about talking about an experience unless he can truly believe, and maybe it's going to be hard to verify that it is in fact paranormal. But he did say there was an incident where he heard these footsteps in the dark and there was absolutely nothing there.
That was at Waverly.
That was at Waverly. Okay, now have you had any experiences other than what Kane experienced that you could share with us?
Oh, I've got so many. I've been doing this since I was 13, long before the show started and things like that. And one of the reasons that drew me into it was I was always one of those people that kind of spirits came too. So it wasn't like I decided to go ghost hunting. It was like they came and, knocked on my door. So, but yeah, I've had so many. I actually just came from, I'm right outside Las Vegas now, and I just came from the Pioneer Saloon, which is a very haunted place. It's the place where Clark Gable waited at the bar while they got Carol Lombard's body off the mountain where she was killed in a plane crash. But that's a very haunted place. I've had, I got super sick, turned ice cold in that place. All the equipment was going off. So that was pretty interesting. But Waverly was interesting. I've been to, every year I go for a month ghost hunting in Scotland. So I've been through most of the castles and things like that. So, if it's out there, I've probably been there.
Now, the paranormal group, the Hollywood Ghost Adventures, did you find it with Kane? And besides that, were you a part of any other ghost hunting group or any other paranormal group before you met Kane Hodder?
No, I was just doing it by myself. And me and friends would go out different times. When I first started, there was no equipment. It was, you went out, had the experience, and that was it. But as more and more equipment comes and it gets more and more fancy, that's where a lot of people are turning. I prefer to keep the equipment simple. That's, to me, a K2 meter voice recorder, night vision camera, and an infrared camera is all I need.
Now, with all this equipment, which obviously Kane deferred the question to you, have you ever captured anything such as an EVP?
Oh, yeah, we've gotten quite a few EVPs actually. One that is really interesting, and it just goes to show you that you really need to really pay attention when you listen to the EVPs. Was one that we got at the Houdini house, and it says on there, one of my guys picks up the K2 meter and he walks into the bathroom. He says, "I'm going to get a base reading." That means he's going to see if the meter goes off before we start asking questions. And right then, about 5 seconds later, we hear a very loud "no" into the microphone. Well, I was over at Roslin Castle one night, about midnight, 1 a.m. with some other people. This is in Scotland by Roslin Chapel. And the guy asked me, he says, "You ever get EVPs?" I said, "Yeah, listen to this one." He goes, "Wow." And I said, "Yeah, that no is pretty specific." He goes, "No, what it says right before there." And I went, "What?" Because I'd never heard anything before there. And he goes, "You need to turn this up when you go home." And I turned it up, and right before it says no, there's 4 words, and it says, "Get back here, punk."
Wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty cranky, whatever was there.
I can imagine how, spine chilling that was in every sense of the word. Now, of all the places you've been to, can you tell us and the people listening here and in the UK, EU, anywhere across the world, where are the most haunted places that people can go that there's a chance, because nothing's for sure, there's a chance they can actually be witness to some paranormal activity?
Well, I can tell you some places I've been that have been really active, but I also need to put a disclaimer in there because ghosts will not play with you on command. I mean, you may go there one time and the whole place just blows up with activity, and you may go back the next time and it'll be absolutely nothing. So that's one of the problems with ghost hunting. You'll sit there in the dark and nothing will happen. Other times you'll go in there with a bunch of people and boom, everything happens. The real Mary King's Close in Edinburgh, Scotland, I just hosted a Paranormal Unity ghost hunt there. I had 3 other ghost hunting teams with me. And I mean, we heard people running. We saw doors, the handles and stuff, and the door shaking, people trying to open them. And there's nobody else in the building but us. We would see like fog down at the end of the thing, like a mist. So, I mean, there's quite a bit there. But for people that are in the UK, there's a place called Bolton Abbey in Yorkshire. And just go there. Take your equipment and go there. It's by far one of the most haunted places I've ever been. And I mean, very haunted.
Now, let me ask you the same thing I asked Kane Hodder. Now, because you are interested in ghosts and you do have an open mind, are you interested in other aspects of paranormal, such as UFOs and things like that?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever
Absolutely.
had a sighting of an ET craft, or what you thought to be an ET craft?
Actually, 2 of them.
Ooh, let's hear those.
And well, they're not that exciting, but I mean, just the description will tell you that that's probably what it was. I used to drive a lot from California back to Tennessee, and if you've ever driven through the desert, like in New Mexico, at nighttime, the stars are fantastic, right? And living in LA, because there's so much ambient light, you never see the stars. So I pulled over one time off a little rest area there, and actually stood on the hood of my car and leaned back on the windshield and just was looking up at the stars for like half an hour. And I saw something moving across the sky. Now, everybody knows that if there's low flying satellites, that you can see them, right? And they'll have light on them from, light on the earth and stuff like that. So you can see them. So I'm watching and I see this thing going across and I'm figuring, well, it's got to be a satellite. And then it took a 90-degree turn. So
yeah,
our stuff doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't. That's violating our known laws of physics.
Yeah. And the exact same thing happened when we were doing a movie in Northern California. We were in the Redwood Forest and, I was stunt coordinating, so they weren't doing any stunts right then. So I walked off in the forest to sit there and look at the stars and saw the same thing happen again.
Now, let's talk about your TV show, Ghost Adventures.
Well, that's not our show. That's another group show called Ghost Adventures. That's Zach and Aaron and Billy Tolley. We have been guests on their shows. We don't have our own TV show because we're too busy doing movies.
It's true. You're on the gold screen or the big screen as opposed to the silver screen.
Yeah.
Now, when you guys were guests on Ghost Adventures, what were the topics or what were the locations you visited for that show?
Well, we only went to one place. Went to a place called the Pico House, and that is down in Los Angeles. And we had some interesting things happen there. Kane was in a room by himself, and when he came back on the Aaron, one of the guys from Ghost Adventures, Kane had said something about killing Aaron, and Kane goes, "Well, at least I have an alibi, right? Because they're filming him." And the EVB came back and it says, Kane goes, "Yeah, at least I'll have an alibi." And it comes back and says, "Something bad?" And then it says again after it says, "Don't say nothing. Don't say anything. They don't know from nothing." And that was on the EVP when Kane was the only one in the room.
EVPs are something that really interests me. Have you ever captured anything that sounded like a demonic voice that was very mean, that didn't want you to be around that area?
Personally, I have not. And I don't know too many people that have, just to be honest with you. It would be very rare for someone to capture something like that. Things that I have noticed from demonic activity, they're more in your face. It's not subtle.
Is there any place that you know or have heard to be haunted that you have yet to visit and to investigate and spend some time there with your equipment?
Oh, there's a lot of places I want to go. And I'm pretty sure they won't let you in. Is one of them, I want to go to the house where all the people got killed up on in Hollywood Hills, with the Wonderland murders.
Yes.
If you know what that was John Holmes and all the thing they wrote Boogie Nights about. And there were 5 people beaten to death with pipes up there. And if there's any place that's haunted, it's going to be that place. There's a lot of places I want to go to. I want to go to a hotel in Deadwood, South Dakota. That's supposed to be very haunted. I want to go to the Stanley Hotel. That's where Stephen King wrote The Shining. I want to go to those. Kane has been to the Stanley.
Yes. Yes.
I have not been there yet.
That's ironic you mentioned that, and so did he, because not only was he there, that was another topic that someone else mentioned recently as it being a very haunted place. And I've heard that for over the years multiple times through different books that I've read from people that were just there and had something happen to them or heard something. Now, let me ask you here about Los Angeles, the Queen Mary. Have you ever had a chance to investigate that? Because I know they won't let me go down there and do what I'd like to do. But then again, I don't have the equipment.
Actually, I've investigated that place multiple times, and about 6 weeks ago I did again. But this time I was trying to do like a secret ghost hunt. I stayed on the ship as a guest, and I decided I was just going to go out late at night and go by myself around the ship with some equipment and see if I could catch anything. Well, I went out there, and before I was done, I had 14 people going with me. As soon as they would see me, they come, "You guys were on Ghost Adventure. I know who you are." I mean, it was like, "Can we go with you?" Sure. So I had like an army following me. I mean, and that's usually you won't get anything when you got that many people around.
Obviously, I would agree. I would think so, and especially if people are recognizing you, and it's going to make it that much harder if you're trying to do something secret. Now, let's talk about your immediate plans before we talk about what's coming into your films and everything else like that. What is the very? You just said you did something at the Pioneer in Vegas, where you are right now. What is the next stop you're going to go to have a ghost hunt?
You know, I'm still trying to figure that out. I've got several that I do want to go to, like the Deadwood Hotel. I want to go up to South Dakota, but you know, a lot of these things are not that close, and they can be pretty dang expensive. I mean, I get invited to a lot of places. I got invited to Seward, Alaska the other day to ghost hunt, but I mean, you know, that cost me $1,000 just to get there and back, you know? So what I prefer to do is save up my money and go to Scotland and go through, you know, all that area. But I do get quite a few people calling to invite me around different places. And if they're close enough, you know, I'll meet up with them, and, you know, we'll go ghost hunting together. Matter of fact, I'm doing a charity ghost hunt next weekend right outside Bakersfield with a guy from Ghost Hunters International, Barry Fitzgerald, and a few other people. So that should be interesting.
Let me ask you about this. Of all the famous ghost hunters, I mean, there's Jeff Bellinger, Jason Hawes. I mean, just so many people. Is there any one or more than one people that have inspired you and influenced you to follow down that path and to take it more seriously as opposed to when you were just having an interest at age 13?
Well, the honest answer is I was doing way before they ever started. So, you know, I mean, I've been doing this for 41 years. Actually, wow. 51 years. And this is long before this mania has come over about ghost hunting and the paranormal and everything else. So, have I picked up techniques from people on TV and things like that? Yes, of course I have, because I'd be silly not to watch what seems to be working, right? But pretty much everything that I do is stuff that I've either developed myself, or, like I said, every once in a while, like Chris Fleming does some really interesting things. Zach Bagans does some interesting things. The guys on Ghost Adventures, you know, Dave and Tango,
yes.
You know, or Steve and Tango, pardon me. You know, they come up with some interesting things. So, you know, and I'm always talking to these guys at conventions and things like that. So, you know, everybody bangs things around, you know, so.
And the people from TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society, I know they never cease to amaze me. That's the great part about them. Now, is there a library that you have anywhere where people can hear your EVPs and see anything else that you've maybe you know, talked about, locations that you've been to and shown what they look like? Is a website or anything like that?
Well, we do have a website, but the problem is it hasn't been updated for quite a while. And the reason is with that is the person who put the site up for us has all the codes and everything to get in, and we can't find him. So it hasn't been upgraded for quite a while. But I do have a magazine that I put out that talks about where we are, what we've done, and things that have just happened. So that's at HGH Mag, which stands for Hollywood Ghost Hunters Magazine. So hghmag.com, and that'll tell you a lot of stuff that's going on.
How many subscribers do you have to that magazine?
I don't have subscribers. It's free. Anybody who wants to come read it, come read it. You don't like it, you don't get your money back.
Then again, hey, you can't go wrong with that. So I'm assuming this is an electronic magazine, of course, right?
Yeah, it's online.
Gotcha. Well, everybody out there, I urge you to please check out that HTS Mag. And again, just like Rick said, you cannot go wrong one way or another because it is free. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your movie career now. What is next for you, and what would you like to do?
Well, I would, to be honest with you, I'd like to end up playing a killer along the lines that like Kane and R.A. have. I mean, I have played the title character in a movie. It was called Dark Wolf. I played the Dark Wolf, but it wasn't, a part that was built to be an iconic part, like Jason or Leatherface or things like that. So I'd like to play one of those guys. That would open some more doors for me. So that would be something I'd be looking for. But anything that comes along, I like to do it. I just like to be involved.
The 75 plus movies you said you were involved, is it mostly behind the scenes, or like you said, stunt coordinator, things like that, as opposed to actually being the actor?
Well, a lot of them are when I first started, I just started doing stunts. And that's actually where I met Kane. I met Kane in a movie called Lone Wolf McQuade back in 1982. And that's how long we've been friends. We've been friends for 37 years.
Have you worked with him on any of the Friday the 13th series that he was part of?
No, I never did that, but I did work with him on the Friday the 13th game.
Yes. He talked about that fact that it took 2 years to make that happen. And to tell you the truth, the only one I'm aware about is the one that came out, I believe, sometime in the late 80s for regular Nintendo. I don't know about the new one, but then again, I don't know very much about these new games, but I would want to check that out because of course, you guys are involved in it. And the technology these days allows you to have video games that are so realistic, sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference between that and a movie. So let me ask you this now. Okay, we talked about UFOs. We talked about ghosts. What other parts of paranormal would you say interest you? Some people say Loch Ness. Other people talk about, different dimensions. Other people talk
about Bigfoot, things like that. Actually,
yes.
I was at Loch Ness not too long ago. And actually found out a very strange thing. When I was there, I found out that the very first person to ever have a written account of Nessie is a guy named St. Columba. And doing research over there into my lineage, I found out that our name is derived from St. Columba. So I thought that was pretty cool that we were related to the guy that saw the first person to ever, record seeing Nessie. But that interests me. I mean, Bigfoot interests me. Matter of fact, I've been invited to go Bigfooting up in New York with some friends of mine, and I plan on doing that. So I'm interested in everything. Kane is interested in everything.
Yes.
We're the same way. We both really like mysteries. That's the fun part.
Well, I get that is a very great part, and that's part of the reason I do this is because of the fact that it's a mystery. If all the answers were right in front of us, then I don't think it'd be as exciting as it is. It's the idea of having something that is either not within our power or something, for instance, like what would be science fiction ends up being science fact is what makes it so intriguing. Now, going back to age 13, what really was it that really got you inspired? Because of the same thing I just said, the fact that it's a mystery?
No, actually, something happened to my mother and I.
Okay.
I lived in Chicago. My grandfather got killed, and he wanted to be buried in Paducah, Kentucky. So, we loaded him onto a train, and we took off, down to where he wanted to be buried. And me and my mom didn't have a lot of money at the time. Of course, I was 13. I didn't have a job. I was a kid. So we tried to find a place that was close to the cemetery. And we went over and went to this place, and it was kind of, wasn't the Hilton, let's put it that way. And when we went in there, my mom asked for a room, and the guy goes, well, I've only got one left, and I have to tell you, it's haunted. Well, I'm 13 years old. Telling a 13-year-old you're going to stay in a haunted room is like getting the gold ticket to Disneyland. I was like, yeah, baby, let's go, right? So we go upstairs, and it was really weird. The room was about 20 feet wide, and it was all wooden floors. It looked like maybe an old basketball floor or volleyball floor, that kind of floor. And the beds were on each wall. The beds were on rollers, so you could put them wherever you wanted, but they were on each wall. And in the middle of the night, I hear my mother yell, and I wake up, and I look over, and I see she's flying towards me in the bed. Bed's rolling across the floor towards me. And then I realize that my bed is rolling across the floor towards her, and we kind of banged in the middle. So we decided, okay, what happened? Did a truck, go by on the vibrations make this, roll, or the floors warped? So we took a glass and laid it on its side and rolled it, and it wouldn't roll downhill or go about a foot. It'd stop. Right? So the floors weren't warped. So then we decided to take the beds and see how far we could shove them. And we could shove them. They go about 4 feet. And these beds went about 10 feet each. So we couldn't debunk it. So after that, I was like, got to figure this stuff out.
And what a heck of a way to start going back into it. Yeah, it seems a lot of people that are involved in this, it goes back to their childhood. For me, it happened to be in 1984 at the tender age of 4 when I had my first UFO sighting. But like you and Kane, I'm interested in all sorts of paranormal. Now, I do know you have to go. I was hoping we'd have more time to keep you in through the second hour. So before I plug in all the necessary things, I'm going to ask you if you have any final statements or anything else you want to tell people, or any places you want to direct them to. Now's the time, Rick.
Well, if you want to see what we're up to, and the fact that everybody in our group does horror movies is kind of interesting. If you go to HGH, which is MAG, which is, if you just remember Hollywood Ghost Hunters magazine and just shorten it .com, you'll see our magazine, and it'll talk a lot about the hunts we've done. And the main thing in there that's right now is an interview that I did with Kane. That there's a part in there where he tells a story that he's never told anyone about the paranormal. So it's worth going to just read that. So that is what I would say would be the thing to do.
I do hope next time we can have both of you on, and for sure, Rick, I definitely would like to bring you on for a lot longer than this. I know this was sort of last minute because of what Kane had to do, but now that we are in contact, we will definitely work something out together. That's for sure. Everybody out there listening, after the break, remember you have another mystery guest. It is another encore, and I do want to thank you all. First of all, I have to thank the stations involved. The people involved right now from Late Night in the Midlands is obviously the owner, Michael Vara, as well as the station managers, Katie and Daryl Neely, who do a lot of work running the entire station, as well as in the United Kingdom, Deprogram Radio Network, plus all the terrestrial stations that carry the show. I want to thank all of them. The most important people I want to thank are you, the listeners. Remember, disclosure is in your hands, meaning that please don't be passive. Whatever you hear from everybody, take that knowledge and try to pass it on or do something about it, because if everyone is passive, I don't think we're going to get anywhere with these mysteries that are going to stay mysteries. And one more thing, again, I say this all the time, when it comes to the radio show, all you have to do is remember the name of it, Dr. J Radio Live. That is DRJ Radio Live. So, for instance, the website, drjradiolive.com, minds.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, YouTube, Buffer, YouTube, whatever you could think of. All those little links are at the very top of the website. So that's all you have to do is to find anything you are looking for. And of course, we do post our guests one day in advance. So it's always a mystery who's going to be, say, in a few days from now. But we sometimes throw hints or crumbs, as they're called, during the shows. So with that being said, folks, everybody stay tuned. And when we get back, you will hear a third guest for this show. With that being said, folks, this is Dr. J, and now I am signing off this live time.